Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 Scores, Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune is up at Hallis Hall, and we are anxiously awaiting Bears Texans, not Titans. Almost said Titans. It's confusing with all the Houston-Nashville connections. But Sunday night, nationally televised audience, a lot of anticipation, Dan. Another big moment for the Bears.
Yeah, as they march through the AFC South here in the month of September. Next stop is Houston Energy Stadium on Sunday night. Primetime game, David. The eyes of the nation will be on the Bears, monitoring the development of Caleb Williams, the showdown between Caleb Williams and C.J. Stroud, two undefeated football teams. There should be a lot of buildup, a lot of hype, a lot of momentum for both teams heading into Sunday night. Should be fun. We haven't been to Houston in a while, and it should be a pretty good matchup.
Let's get right into it with our opening drive.
It's time for the opening drive.
A lot of conversation about the availability of Oduzne. A lot of conversation about the health of Keenan Allen. Is he 100%? Will he play? What can you tell us about the latest on those two specifically, but also any surprises on the Bears injury report?
Thursday afternoon's practice report. DNP, Keenan Allen. DNP, Oduzne. That leaves both of those guys in serious question for Sunday night's game, and it leaves the offense in a little bit of troubleshooting mode, David, as they try to figure out what direction they'll go with their contingency plans. Obviously, I think you would expect Tyler Scott to be active regardless. I think you would expect him to have a heightened role in the offense, regardless of what happens here. But obviously, these are two major injuries worth keeping an eye on. The Keenan Allen one, as you know now for a couple weeks, I've been nervous about. This heel injury has been lingering since the end of August. We are now in mid-September. This is a heel injury that seems to be related to something that kept him out of the end of last season. And the lack of clarity that we've been able to get inside the walls here at Hallis Hall is a little bit troubling with what went from a cleat issue to now something that is, I think essentially in week 4. And you don't want that to be happening at this stage of the season for certain. And so you would imagine to be on the cautious side of things on Sunday that neither of those guys would play. If there is a turnaround here in the next couple of days, we'll keep you abreast of those developments.
I heard you say the other day, I think that, and it made me stop and pause. Do you have more concern over the way that the Keenan Allen injury could affect the Bears than Oduzne's?
Oh, long term for certain, because I mean, like Rome, we documented this the other night. Like Oduzne punctured his lung at Arizona State last year, and then he couldn't take the team flight back to the University of Washington and still played the next week in the rivalry game against Oregon. Like, this dude's toughness is there. He will be, in my opinion, back to normal fairly quickly, whether that's a game, 2 games, whatever it is. The Keenan Allen thing, it feels like it has the potential to linger. Feels like it has the potential to stick around for a while. And so I look, like it's one of those injuries that it just doesn't feel like you're going to be in the clear until you see like 3, 4, 5 consecutive weeks where he's not on the injury report.
That's not good for a quarterback that needs to develop chemistry with his top receivers. And those are 2 of his top 3 receivers. I anticipate maybe Keenan Allen playing despite not practicing. He's a pro, and you would think veterans get the benefit of the doubt, which is fine and understandable. But I also think every time we give a nod to the veterans day off and these kinds of things that you give a guy of his accomplishment and stature, we tend to overlook that it's important to develop chemistry with a rookie quarterback, and every little practice matters. So as much as you need to maybe keep him off the field to preserve his health, keeping him on it improves the chemistry with Caleb Williams. And you're going to be, it's kind of a tough, it's a conundrum.
Real catch-22 here. And look, like Caleb Williams, I thought was very mature on Wednesday in talking about the responsibility he has in a week like this of making sure that he is dialing in on the details with all of the receivers in the receivers room, just so that when game time arrives, you are making sure that you're on the same page with route depths, with the way certain guys run a route. That Tyler Scott runs one route differently than Keenan Allen may run the same route. And so you have to be aware of that, to what you're talking about. The chemistry, that feel for things that happen within a game has to be developed through time on task. And when the time on task is limited, it creates a little bit of a ripple effect. Now, I think for Tyler Scott, who was inactive in week one, Matt Eberflus had some pretty straightforward messaging, and that's when a window of opportunity opens, you better be ready to seize on it. And I think Tyler Scott took the frustration of being inactive in week one and has kept himself motivated and understands that this is an opportunity here for him to go out on a big stage and show that he can contribute to this football team in a meaningful way. Look, you've been through enough seasons around here to know that troubleshooting mode is just part of the deal during an NFL season. You don't want to have to do it at that position when you were looking forward to having a trio that everyone thought could have been among the league's best. But now at this point in the short term, you're going to have to kind of navigate different waters.
So let's get to the other news Thursday at Halas Hall. Richard Hightower, the coordinator. We'll talk about what Shane Waldron had to say later in the pod. We'll talk about what Eric Washington had to add later in the pod. I felt like, as you did, I think, Richard Hightower being very open and honest about Velus Jones was significant. Dan, I'll let you take it from there because you were in the room when Richard Hightower talked about Velus Jones and holding the kickoff return man accountable.
Well, let's get something straight here. Like this Bears team is ready to contend for a playoff berth. And so you have to have an elevated bar in everything that you do. That's reality as you're trying to become a football team that is chasing bigger goals. I think Richard Hightower's special teams did a wonderful job of impacting the game in week one. Daniel Hardy's blocked punt, Jonathan Owens' return for the touchdown, the 67-yard kickoff return by DeAndre Carter. They put their fingerprints all over a week one win. And yet Velus Jones's muffed catch and kick that resulted in a Bears turnover was one of those types of plays where you go, boy, like you can't afford those kinds of mistakes. I was stunned after the game on Sunday, David, when Matt Eberflus said that he was proud of Velus for the way he responded. Just struck me as something that I would say to my, 11-year-old Little League team. And we're in the NFL with a team that's trying to establish himself as an NFC playoff team. And you can't be proud of guys who respond to dropping a ball that's right in their hands and then kicking it 20 yards. And so there was an exchange today with Richard Hightower about how do you go about the coaching responsibility of messaging to your players what's acceptable and what's not. And so here was a little bit of that back and forth about Velus Jones with Richard Hightower today.
You know how you feel about Velus. We know how the coaching staff at large feels about Velus. How do you go about honestly evaluating his big mistakes without sugarcoating them when you're in a situation like you are with him right now?
Yeah, well, the great thing is I'm not very good at sugarcoating. So I don't sugarcoat anything. So, in fact, I just talked to the kid 5 minutes before I walked in here because we just happened to cross paths. But, in regards to what happened in the game, it's unacceptable. We all know that. We value the ball. And on that particular play, we didn't. And it hurt the football team. So, I'm not going to sit up here and make the whole press conference about Velus because there were so many other players in that game that made significant contributions. And I think they deserve to be, highlighted.
You obviously know, Richard, you obviously know what's at stake with those mistakes. And I imagine that resonates with Velus when you speak to him very directly.
There's a question. What's your question? I'm sorry.
Just in terms of making it very clear to him of what you need from him for him to be able to retain a role for you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as a human being, I hurt for the kid. I really do. But as a coach, we have to evaluate all our options. And he knows in the return game, number one thing is to take care of the football. Richard. I hope that answers your question.
I don't know that it did, Dan. You tell me. You can speak Hightower much better than I can, but I don't know that it did. I understand. I personally almost respect the conflict that they're feeling because I don't know where the coach and the person ends and begins with this staff. I really don't.
It's an interesting back and forth for sure. I do think it answered my question from the standpoint of just establishing that no matter how much we like you as a person, no matter how much we like your effort in a cutthroat league like this, you have to meet a standard or you don't get to keep your job. And so
okay,
I would
stop. So does that mean he's not returning kicks on Sunday?
I would be stunned if he was back on the kickoff return team.
So does that mean he's inactive?
Well, the active part of this equation, David, I think is contingent on what happens with the rest of the health of your roster, right? Like
Well,
you are going.
then that's why I think Matt Eberflus said he was proud of him. Okay, and I'm not trying to play gotcha or anything, but I do think that like this is a tough balance to strike. I said after he said he was proud of Velus Jones, it didn't necessarily bother me because I think it was consistent with who he has been as a coach. He's not the guy that gets up there and goes full bus toss on his players. He tries to strike a balance, and I think that he might have had in the back of his mind, yeah, you know what, we're not putting him deep to return kicks again because that's a liability. But we need him in other phases, and I don't want to lose him. And the fact that he came back made me proud of him, so I'm going to express that pride. And I think you heard some of that conflict from Hightower today.
That's fair. Yeah, that's a fair assessment of the situation for certain. And I do think, look, like you're right, because they may need him to be active on Sunday just based on the needs of the football team, based on what's happening with their offense. I don't know what they will do with their receiving core. Velus has obviously moved in the running backs room, but he has been here as a receiver before. He can play a little bit of a hybrid role. And if you do that, and when you do that, you're going to need him to be in the proper mindset. And so you do have to strike that balance as a coach for sure. I was just happy that Richard Hightower was firm and to the point, used the word unacceptable for the mistake, made it very clear that the number one goal on special teams and in the return game is taking care of the football, and that goal wasn't met. And the next thing you know, you've got to move in a different direction. And so it's going to be DeAndre Carter, and then I would imagine either Tyler Scott or Khalil Herbert as the other returner back there on kickoffs. And then you just have to figure out what the rest of your football team looks like on Sunday to figure out where Velus Jones fits in it.
I like Richard Hightower when he talks. I think he talks like a football coach. I respect where he's coming from. I don't know him like I know some of the other coaches or whatever, but I just think that when he talks, he's an easy guy for me to respect.
Understood, right? Like, and again, like I say, he had an impact on the football game on Sunday. And you go back and you watch the design that the Bears put in on that 67-yard return by DeAndre Carter and the way that they blocked that up with Travis Homer coming back to seal the backside on that play. You can tell that was a wrinkle that was part of the experimentation with this new dynamic kickoff of trying to find ways that you can spring a guy. And they sprung a guy, and it got him 67 yards and put him in position to score without needing much from an offense that wasn't giving them much. And so, look, you're going to need that for a while now. You're going to need your defense and special teams to be a little bit of extra support for the young quarterback and the evolving offense. And so let's see which direction they take it on Sunday in Houston.
So let's face it, these are the minute details of roster construction, and they might be little things that lead to big things. But the big story, the marquee matchup is C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, the rookie of the year, the best rookie quarterback last year in some time since Joe Burrow, facing off against a guy who we feel like he could be the best rookie of this class and in some time. So this is the big matchup. We heard from Caleb Williams on Wednesday. I felt like he has been consistent with his approach since after the game through what he said Wednesday. Dan, the one thing that stood out to me about what Caleb Williams had to say, and maybe this didn't affect C.J. Stroud necessarily, it was a tough week for quarterbacks in the National Football League. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that. The way that teams treat preseason now,
for sure,
everybody's a little rusty. But Caleb Williams, and I don't think it was excuse making, but he did remind people that, hey, what happened on Sunday reminded him, and in week one reminded him how hard it is to play football or quarterback in the National Football League. And he was one of several quarterbacks that struggled.
One of Caleb's greatest strengths is how grounded he is and how easy it is for him to find perspective through the highs and the lows. They're going to have to ride that for a while here. I think you and I talked in the middle of August about whether the city of Chicago at large was ready for a rookie quarterback again, of going through the experiences of ugly performances that make you go, oh God, that was not what we were expecting. These are going to be regular occurrences during Caleb Williams' rookie season. It's just a matter of trying to minimize them and not making sure they're every week occurrences. But there is going to be struggle, David, for the rookie quarterback. And I think Caleb understands that as well as anyone. And I think that's a huge, huge mature outlook for a rookie to have. And look, like we talked in training camp during some of the rough patches, like you lean into those struggles and you use them as learning experiences. Well, now it gets more difficult because the outside noise amplifies and the stakes of your mistakes are much greater when the regular season occurs. And you can imagine what the tone in the city of Chicago would have been like this week if they didn't rally for that win, right? Like it would have been a whole different conversation this week. And as it is, it's a conversation about a football team that won a football game, but also has a rookie quarterback who didn't play very well and an offense that didn't look very good. Well, you go to Houston and you lose by double digits. Stay tuned for our prediction segment. The heat's going to get turned up a little bit next week. And so Caleb's got to be consistently grounded the way he has been to date to be able to navigate all that, because the seas are going to be choppy for the foreseeable future.
Let's get on to some things that will help him navigate those seas as we move the chains. Dan, when you look at week one, you're exactly right. The conversation in town would have been entirely different had the Bears lost that game, not found a way to survive with their defense and special teams. The conversation surrounding Caleb Williams would have been entirely different. Maybe his demeanor might have been different. Who knows? But good teams win those games. And I just wondered, you've been out there all week. What are the kinds of things that you've picked up on? What are the kinds of things that you've observed that maybe just make you feel like the Bears, boy, you win a game like that, and now the belief just begins to grow, and any sort of things that maybe have been question marks are now exclamation points?
I don't know what our FCC regulations are for this podcast. Maybe we need to dig into them a little bit more as we go forward. But for me, the quote of the week came from Darrell Taylor, a new Bear who's only been here for 4 weeks. And I asked him on Wednesday afternoon what he learned when he saw a football team down 17-0 in the first half, show the fight it showed to come back and win. And he said, I learned that we are resilient as bleep. And he said, I'm sorry to say it that way, but we are resilient as bleep. And he doubled down on it. And I think that was sort of the slogan
T-shirt
of the week, right? Yeah. The t-shirt that you'd make coming out of week one, because I do think you saw a football team that showed the collective belief to find a way in week one, even when they didn't have their best stuff. And that's the mark of a really good football team, when you can win when you don't have your best stuff. I had a couple interesting one-on-one conversations in the locker room throughout the week. And, Jaquan Brisker said, this is not a game we win my first 2 seasons here, because there just wasn't that same level of collective resolve and unity and belief of going to get it. And then Tremaine Edmonds said something that was really interesting to me. He said he walked in the locker room at halftime, and not only was he struck by the vibes that he found in there was no finger pointing, no complaining, no sort of, negative energy in there, but that there were guys actively saying out loud, we're going to win this game. We're going to win this game. We got this. We got this. And he believes that not only having that inside your head, but saying it out loud created an energy in the locker room. He said it's kind of like the law of attraction. You speak good things into existence, and that sort of, we got this mindset, when vocalized, created this sort of collective purpose that you saw in the second half. Look, the defense went out there and pitched a shutout. They created 3 takeaways, allowed 4 first downs in the entire second half. And you saw play after play after play where they turned the football game because they had this unwavering belief that they were going to get it done. You've been around good football teams inside this building that have gone on to play in playoff games and play for championships, and you understand what that feels like in here. I think this team has that intangible right now in their back pocket, and is going to be very valuable fuel as they go through a long season.
That's as valuable as anything. I mean, you need to have the talent, you need to be able to execute, but the intangibles are huge. One observation before we move on to our prediction segment. I think another thing it's worth pointing out, and this may be just a product of being around a lot of bad football teams, but typically when something goes wrong, or I know the victory maybe made a lot of these things easier to take, but you had a veteran in Nate Davis who was essentially benched. You had Colt Kmet, who was a $50 million tight end who was essentially ignored. And you had a quarterback who was the most hyped rookie quarterback and most talked about quarterback in Bears history, who was essentially a dud in his debut. And you didn't really have you had Colt Kmet speak publicly about how this is just part of the thing he has to deal with. You didn't hear a peep out of Nate Davis, who, we haven't heard from him much at all, but maybe that's no big deal. But there's not a lot of dissension that has been murmuring. And Caleb Williams sounds like the most confident guy in the locker room still. So I think that these are the kinds of things that when you're a bad team, you worry more about those kind of things becoming issues that allow you, or maybe don't allow you, to identify intangibles as a strength. So the Bears deal with those things pretty well, immaturely. And I think that is a sign of a team that has what you described on their side?
I described what we saw on Sunday as a really impressive combination of calm and competitive tenacity, because you need both things, right? There's two ways you can go that are the wrong roads when you're down 17 points. It's either trying to do too much to make it all up at once, or it's just feeling defeated, and that even if it's for 10 minutes, you have that feeling of defeat and the game gets away from you. And the Bears showed neither of those things. And they dug in and they stayed steady and they locked in, and they knew that if they just focused on what they needed to do, that the big plays would come. The big plays did come, and it resulted in a victory that, David, I don't think you can understate how valuable it is to clear that hurdle in week 1 of a season like this, because now you have an experience in your back pocket and in your library that the next time you get down by double digits, you just look at each other on the sideline with a look in your eyes that we've been here before, and that is a huge thing for a football team. We'll see which way they channel it. Again, stay tuned for our prediction segment.
So yeah, Shane Waldron, obviously the frame of reference is good for all the positives we described. Not so much so maybe the offensive coordinator. You were at Hallis Hall today when he spoke to the media. What were the questions like? What was his demeanor like? How would you describe the most important stuff that he said?
Yeah. So, honestly, David, as we kind of spin forward toward the Texans game, one of the things that I think we're all going to be watching on Sunday night is how does Shane Waldron bounce back from week 1, a performance in which the quarterback never found his rhythm, a performance in which the offense never got past 150 total yards. And you saw some issues, right? Whether it's, operational issues or rhythm issues or whatever it may be, personnel issues. Shane Waldron's going to learn really quickly what it's like to have a bad offensive outing in this city. You are going to become the dartboard for a lot of people in the outside world trying to figure out what went wrong. I think he handled himself pretty well for on the bridge from week 1 to week 2. But the bigger issue here now, David, I think is showing through the corrections what you've done to get better. And it's going to be on display for the whole world on Sunday night to see how the Bears take what they learned from their errors in week 1, and albeit potentially without Keenan Allen and Oduzne, and how they spin it into production on the offensive end in week 2. And so, look, like I think one of the things you're curious about with Shane is how he handles personnel groupings. That was a big topic of conversation the last several days. And Cole Kmet under 50% of the snaps played after getting a $50 million extension last year. And you see some of the receiver combinations, and there's questions there. So, I think what we can hear from Shane now is a little bit of a back and forth on what his overview was when he zoomed out, looked at the tape, looked at the results, and then had to field some questions on Thursday afternoon about some of the personnel choices he made within the game against the Titans.
Challenging to get all the top 3 receivers on the field at the same time. Like what was behind that with DJ, Keenan, and Romy only getting 10 snaps together?
Yeah, I think just in terms of the flow of the game, I think, starting with me, stuff we can do a better job of coaching is getting us into a better rhythm. And I think when you get into some of those games where we were in a little bit of a up and down rhythm throughout the course of the game, some of the personnel pairings that we were looking to get to didn't really play out the way we were hoping to as far as the course of the game. And there's, it's going to be tough each week, obviously, to have a perfect distribution of everyone's reps right there, but something we looked at and talked about as a staff of how we can do a better job to help our guys and getting that rotation and getting the guys out there together a little bit more often.
As an extension of that, maybe not, what was your overview of Cole's usage when you zoomed out on Sunday's game?
I think I would piggyback right off of that because we know Cole's one of the top tight ends in the league. He does a great job for us. He's done nothing but the right thing ever since I've been around him. So just that's more on us and starting with me of getting the reps, a little bit balanced out. But it also goes back to playing efficient football, and when we're doing that, not getting tilted out of some of the ways we wanted to go into that game.
So I don't think he sounded that defensive, Dan. I don't think he sounded. I like the way he answered it. I still don't know. I hope it's a point of emphasis because besides Cole Kmet, I think that there was a stat out there that, and maybe it was from you. I apologize for not identifying who reported it, but their big 3 wide receivers are only on the field for 10 of the 56 snaps together. And I don't know if the Bears went in with the concerted effort of knowing what they wanted to do personnel-wise. And to me, I don't know how you spend the entire offseason and training camp not knowing better what you want to do personnel-wise.
Well, so there are a couple things to this, a couple layers. Number one, I did appreciate the ownership that Shane took in that back and forth, and the acknowledgement that, look, like we as coaches have to find a better way to find that formula. I do think that you get knocked out of some of the visions you have going into a game when your offense struggles as much as it does, and you don't extend drives, and you're not able to get the things that you thought on your call sheet were going to put you in position to score points, and then it gets away from you on some afternoons. You've heard me multiple times say that for a new offense and a new coordinator, a new play caller, you get the month of September. You get to iron some things out. Like, that's just a fair grace period to try to figure things out against an opposing defense, a set of opposing defenses, and try to get your identity established. One of the drawbacks to having the number of mouths to feed in this offense is you have a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and it can't be easy all the time. It's always feels better when you win. It's going to feel a lot better when you produce and you win, and no one will complain about any of these things. But when your offense sputters, people are going to go, well, why don't you have your best players in the game in situations where you would expect your best players in the game? They're going to have that ironed out on Sunday night. Again, like, I think this is a well-timed spotlight game on Sunday, because everything that happens is going to be subject to national scrutiny, and so you're going to be on your P's and Q's, and you better be aware going into the game of what you want to do, and you better be aware within the game of how you need to adjust to things that aren't going the way you had planned.
One of the big things the Bears are going to have to be aware of defensively, Joe Mixon. The way that the Titans gouged the Bears in the first quarter on the ground is the way that the Texans envision doing the same with Mixon, who is off to a terrific start. That is a offense that has skill at every level. They have an offensive line that knows how to make room for him. He's going to be a problem. Dan, Eric Washington addressed the Joe Mixon issue today. What did he have to say?
Yeah, so look, like, we talk about this Texans offense, and we start with C.J. Stroud, and then we go right to the trio of receivers with Diggs and Dell and Collins, and you go, man, that's a lot to account for. Well, Joe Mixon gets in there in his first game in Houston and turns up 159 yards on 30 carries, and they leaned into it, and they kept leaning into it, and it was really the engine of that 29-27 win over the Indianapolis Colts. And so, like, I asked Eric Washington on Thursday just about the Texans' ability to lean on Mixon and to use a running game that clearly catalyzed their success in week one. And here's some of what Eric had to say.
With the way they established the run last week and then wedded themselves to it, what did you see on video about how Mixon had the day that he had?
Yeah, it's number one, their run inventory creates some issues for you. I mean, they can go from a gap scheme concept with pullers to an outside zone looking to cut the football back. And so they've got a nice blend, a nice mix of run concepts that you have to do a really good job of addressing and fitting, especially when they start to pull an offensive lineman.
So, David, you're talking about a little bit of a versatile attack that Bobby Sloak Jr. is using down there, and you hear Eric Washington talk about the ability to kind of flip between a couple different schemes and challenge you and make your eyes be reliable. He also talked about how consistent Joe Mixon has been with his ball security, and for a Bears defense that's talking a lot about being one of the league's best and taking the football away, it's going to be a big challenge to get it away from him. You're going to have to try to get it away from C.J. Stroud, who did a really great job as a rookie of taking care of the football as well. And so the Bears have their work cut out for them defensively to take over the game the way they did against the Texans, and it's particularly in the second half in week one.
And especially in the secondary. So you stop the run and you force C.J. Stroud to pass, and I don't know if that's such a good idea either. You've got Stephon Diggs, you got Nico Collins, you got Tank Dell. You've got a trio of receivers that's going to pose a challenge for the Bears trio of cornerbacks. I think the Bears trio of cornerbacks, I mean, it's very myopic and provincial to say that this could be as good of a trio or talented potentially as any trio of cornerbacks in the NFL. But they're trending in that direction because you've got your shutdown corner who's elite. You've got the NFC Defensive Player of the Year in Tyreek Stevenson, and you have Kyler Gordon, who might be the best athlete among the three of them. So it's not overstatement. It's not exaggeration. How do you see this matchup unfolding? And do you think that might be exaggerating it a bit for the Bears?
I love the thought of settling into my seat in the press box and watching this sort of 3-on-3 battle, to some extent. Obviously, there's 11 guys on both sides of the ball, but you've got three dynamic playmakers in the Texans offense, and then you match them with Jalen Johnson, you match them with the NFC Defensive Player of the Week and Tyreek Stevenson, you match them with Kyler Gordon, who you know how I feel about his ability to impact football games. It should be awesome to watch that competition. That is a six-pack of guys who breathe competitive fire. You know what I mean? And that is going to be evident all throughout that game. This is why you feel like you're spoiled sometimes in this job, to be able to have a front row seat to watch that. It should be fascinating. I don't know. Did you catch the video that the Bears put on social media about 5.5 minutes of Jalen Johnson mic'd up?
Yes.
I mean, like what
He's
would
right
you
to
tell me?
mic up.
You tell me how you felt when you got to the end of that video.
I felt like getting my wrist tape and getting my old sweatbands out and taping my ankles and where's that helmet, because I wanted to hit somebody. You feel that, you never lose that. And Jalen Johnson was just like, it was easy to get energized and get those juices flowing the way that he talks when he's on the field. Yes, I felt that.
David, I have goosebumps on my arm right now as you were talking about reacting to that, because you just feel the passion that dude plays with. And like I was joking with Mark Potash of the Sun-Times on I guess it was Wednesday morning when we got here to Hallis Hall. I said, like one of the clips in that mic'd up package is Jalen say, "They don't believe in you, Jay. They don't believe in you, Jay." And I'm saying, who doesn't believe in you? The people that voted you to the Pro Bowl, the front office that gave you the huge contract extension. But I love that he has that little, demon in the back of his head that is constantly needling him and telling him on every single play to go prove himself. And that fire will never be extinguished, and it's absolutely contagious. And then you see some of the plays he makes in week one, and you see that, on top of the way he played in 2023. And you go, yeah, man, like I understand why guys voted this guy a captain. I understand why guys want to play alongside him. Jalen Johnson is absolute, what you want when you're building a team that wants to make a run at being one of the greats in the league.
He's the guy that helps dispel the notion that people stop playing once they get paid. His first game after the big contract, he goes out and is as elite as ever. So yeah, it's easy to get excited about what he brings. And I think that you're right. The 3-on-3 Gus Macker tournament going on between those guys on Sunday night at Energy Stadium
nice reference.
is going to be a lot of fun to watch it unfold. All right, it's time that we make our predictions. The suspense is killing me. I wonder who Studs is going to pick this week. Let's bring in Adam Studzinski, our producer. We can start with his prediction, because I know I am waiting with bated breath, and I don't know which direction he's going to go.
Listen, guys, I'm not crazy. The Bears aren't going to win this game.
Oh, wow. I am surprised. I thought you were picking Bears all the way.
Season 3 Take the North, I feel like Studs has come to like a very reasonable place.
He's grown up. He's all grown up now. Wow.
So you guys know sometimes I'll go outside the box and pick them, but the Texans are just a better team. So, and Bears without their best, probably at least without one of their receivers. We'll see about Keenan Allen. And then it's a tough uphill battle. I think the Bears will keep it close into the fourth quarter, and then the CJ Stroud will get another touchdown on the board, and that'll pretty much be it. So we'll go Texans 27, Bears. Or, no. Texans 28, Bears 19, and
19. You got him kicking some field goals. Mr. Santos is going to be busy again.
I don't know how they get to 19, but they'll get there.
Touchdown and 4 field goals. All right, Dan, what's yours?
There you go.
Just so you know, Studs, Kevin Fishbane of The Athletic walked out of here about 20 minutes ago. He also has the Bears scoring 19 points on Sunday, so you guys are in the same boat with that. I've got the Bears scoring 3 less than that, 16 points. I got the Texans at 27. That's an 11-point home win for the Texans, and it's just, for me, this is just a really tough ask. You've got a rookie quarterback on the road for the first time in a work-in-progress offense without 2 of his top 3 receivers, and there's just going to be one too many bumps in the road for the Bears to take over this football game. The defense is going to play well, but not well enough to dominate like they did in the second half against the Titans. And so it's a back to earth Sunday night performance by the Bears, 27-16 losers, and they come back to Chicago at 1-1.
All right, interesting. Boy, does that make me the optimist of the group, the guy who's drinking the Kool-Aid? I don't think the Bears are going to win this game. I think that this could be one of the toughest games, if one of the two toughest games on their schedule all season long. Texans are going to be a playoff team. They're a trendy Super Bowl pick. They've got all the things that Bears want to be this year, maybe next year. I do think the defense is going to play at a high level, though, and I do think they're going to contain that offense as best they can. The offense for the Bears, it's conceivable. They have a good game. They make some progress, but they come up short anyway. It could be the opposite of last week. You could feel very good about Caleb Williams coming out in a loss. It's going to be a loss. Texans 24, Bears 21.
Waiting all day for Sunday night, right?
Waiting all day for Sunday night, which reminds me, oh my gosh, I'm not covering the game. I can stay home and watch Carrie Underwood. I am going to be enjoying the way that she puts a spin on this song because it's all about her voice, and I think she's one of my favorite country singers. I can't wait. Thanks for reminding me. I'll be waiting all day for Sunday night.
You got it. And then we'll be waiting all day for Monday morning and the reaction that you'll get on the Mully and Haugh show.
Absolutely. Great tease there. Let's wrap things up with our 2-minute drill.
The 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill.
So obviously, bigger stage, wider audience, big moment for Caleb Williams. I think this is the kind of thing where, since we're just off making our predictions, I predict that he will bounce back. I think that I could easily see him gathering himself. It's going to be a tough challenge because DeMeco Ryans, defensive-minded head coach, the secondary for the Texans, young but talented. They did give up 2 big plays, 2 chunk plays, and some to the Colts. Three chunk plays to the Colts. There's a 60-yarder, there's a 54-yarder, and then there was another
50-yarder, yeah.
50-yarder. I believe that this is an opportunity. If Caleb Williams can do the special, he's going to have a great opportunity to seize the moment. I think he's better in this game, and I think the bright lights will bring out the best in him.
Yeah, it's notable that you bring up the big plays. Anthony Richardson hit 2 to Alec Pierce, another to Ashton Doolin. The Doolin one was more of a run and catch after a pretty good shot play down the field, and then he took off the rest of the way for a 54-yard touchdown. But it does give you the hope that those big play openings will be there. The Bears are going to have to seize them when they're there. Their biggest play opportunity against the Titans is a play action shot to Keenan Allen along the left sideline, and they didn't pick up a blitz properly, and Caleb's arm got hit, and it fell harmlessly incomplete. You can't have that happen when those openings are there, and so let's see how the Bears respond.
Who starts at right guard?
Nate Davis.
Okay. I didn't know if the rotation was going to be intact or if he was benched. Ryan Bates healthy?
He was still on the injury report. He's got 2 injuries now listed, a shoulder and an elbow. This is why I say the health of your football team is going to dictate some of the decisions more than you dictate some of the decisions. So the Bears are going to have to be in that mode.
Darrell Taylor was the most quotable Bear all week. Will he be the most unblockable Bear on Sunday night?
Don't forget about Montez Sweat. He needs to put his fingerprints on this football game, and I do think that you saw some things that were promising from DeMarcus Walker. Tyreek Stevenson gets NFC Defensive Player of the Week honors this week for returning the football, but DeMarcus Walker made that play. He's the one that wrapped up Will Levis and forced him into that decision. Next thing you know, the Bears have a game-winning touchdown. So pretty good signs out of the Bears pass rush, which we scrutinized all through the offseason. They got to keep that going.
Have they added any tackles to TJ Edwards total while we've been doing this podcast?
He now has 36 from week 1.
Okay.
Yeah. They added 21 more since the last time we talked.
And since you won't be listening to the game or watching it on television, you'll be there. What is your suggestion to me to deal with the Collinsworth issue?
See what he has to say about Tyson Bagent. I know that'll be something that you want to keep your ears peaked for. That caused a lot of controversy.
I don't know. Nothing personal. It just it could be a long night, but I think we'll figure that out. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to you like to see the way that the Bears are talked about nationally, and you contrast with what how we do it locally, because we're there every day and see a lot more and get the insight from guys like you who are there up close and personal.
No doubt. One last thing before we get out of here. I did have a chance to dust off some archives from the Combine. Had a chance to talk to DeMeco Ryans in February back in Indianapolis about the rookie season emergence of C.J. Stroud. Obviously, at the time, we were trying to figure out how the Bears were going to put together their formula. 2 things that he sort of noted that I think are applicable to the Caleb Williams discussion. Number one, the Texans talked so much about how they were drawn in the pre-draft process and then throughout all of the 2023 season by the calm confidence that CJ Stroud had on an everyday basis, and the way that that sort of demeanor rubbed off on everyone around him and then created sort of that swell of belief that he was going to be the guy that was going to lead them somewhere. You can see the parallels already with how that might translate for Caleb Williams and the things that he's doing for this Bears team. DeMeco Ryans also talked about creating a support structure around CJ Stroud, and it was a support structure that included last year a veteran backup in Case Keenum. It included Bobby Sloak Jr., first-time play caller in a new offense. It included former Bears offensive coordinator Bill Lazor, Shane Day, Jared Johnson. And so you had a full group of people that DeMeco Ryans thought that CJ Stroud could get the answer to any question from, and thought that was very instrumental throughout the long grind of a season. We'll see kind of how, if that's applicable at all to what the Bears are doing with Caleb Williams. But obviously you see a model there in Houston for a rookie quarterback emerging and really having almost an unprecedented season and leading the Texans from 3 wins to 10, a division title and a playoff win. If the Bears could replicate any of that, I think the city of Chicago would have a parade in January.
Texans, Bears, Stroud, Williams, Flusy, DeMeco Ryans, all kinds of matchups, all kinds of comparisons, and lots of parallels. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch us on 678 Scores YouTube page, and we appreciate you listening to us on Take the North Live Monday night on The Score. For Adam Sadinsky, who picked the Texans, by the way, Dan Wiederer, I am David Haugh. Thanks for listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.